Hi, I'm John. Over the decades, I've met, interacted with, and gotten to know some of the world's most incredible wine people, wine experts, wine makers, wine media, wine lovers. And there's something that really is amazing. Almost all of them had this one point in their life that they tasted, they drank a certain wine, and it changed their life. Let me tell you my story. I had been exposed to great wines, wine tasting from 5 or 6 years old. My dad was a famous collector. He had 20,000 bottles in his Connecticut cellar, primarily First Growth Bordeaux's, the great Right Bank Bordeaux's, Grand Cru Burgundies. Great wines were nothing new. But I always thought my dad was a little bit too much with the wines. And I appreciated it, I understood it, but I didn't really get it. So let's fast forward to Saint Martin in the Caribbean. And I was about 16 years old, give or take. And my dad and I were gonna have lunch. My brother had a girlfriend, so he went to the beach, Dad and I went to lunch. Saint Martin is a beautiful island in the Caribbean. And half of it is Dutch, that's where the good shopping is. Half of it is French, that's where the good restaurants and the good wines are. So we went to a restaurant on a dock, and just with my dad, and I ordered lovely seafood because, you know, Saint Martin, it's an island. Seafood's better than meats there. And Dad, I forget what he ordered, but something nice. And then when Dad looked at the wine list, you could see it in his eyes. He didn't think maybe it's not correct. Maybe he saw wrong. Called over, it was a small restaurant. They didn't really have a sommelier. The waiter, do you have this wine? Yes, sir, we have it. Is this price correct? Yes, sir, it is. Okay, he ordered the wine. We opened the wine. Dad, of course, smelled the wine. He didn't taste it right away. I mean, he said, okay, call your brother. Everything's changed. What he ordered was a 1959 Chateau Haut-Brion, and it was only $99, which was incredible. You couldn't buy that wine even at wholesale, even at auctions for that price. And what my dad would later discover is that the restaurant previously was owned by a Frenchman who loved wines and collected wines. When he grew old, he went back to France and he sold the restaurant with all his wine collection to another gentleman who didn't really know the individual values of each wine. So Dad saw this. He said, John, let's taste it together. And we tasted. Sometimes with older wine, it can be a little passé. Dad was still doubtful because maybe the price was low because this wine was not stored properly or something like that. Oh, no. When he tasted the wine and I tasted the wine, incredible. And at that moment of my life, I realized that the beauty of wine is in fact ineffable. You can't describe it. Suddenly, within a few seconds of drinking 1959 Haut-Brion in Saint Martin Island, I got it. And ever since then, I've understood and had a passion for wine. And everybody's story is different. But those wine geeks, those wine lovers, those people who talk too much about wines, spend too much of their money on wines, are so into wines, we all have our moment. And to finish this nice little story, I'll say that Dad also insisted that my brother leave the beach, leave his girlfriend, come back, taste the wine. I think initially my brother was a little disappointed. Of course, when he tasted the Haut-Brion, he was not disappointed. And then Dad asked, how many more bottles of this wine do you have? And they said, sir, we have one more. And of course, we drank it at lunch. A memorable lunch and a wine that changed my life.